My name is Maria Grazia Giuffreda, and I am the head of the user engagement and support at the Swiss National Supercomputing Centre. We belong to ETH Zurich, but we are actually located physically in Lugano, the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland.
Maria, can you please tell me how your centre is working to solve the COVID-19 problem?
CSCS is solving the COVID problem in a number of, being involved in a number of initiatives. And so this was quite impressive because we all started immediately. So at least in Europe, the emergency started in March, and in the beginning of April, we already had the first scientific projects running on our system. So we have had a number of initiatives going on. At the Swiss level, the Swiss National Funds opened a call for research on COVID, on the SARS-CoV-2, to take care of both the experimental approach, but also the computational approach. So they would apply in this call of the national funds to ask resources here at CSCS, which we provided without further reviewing process, let's put it this way. Then we were involved in the PRAISE fast track COVID call. So all the hosting members and the members of the PRAISE consortium, or the PRAISE is the Partnership for Advanced Computing in Europe, who had a big machine, put resources to get a pool of resources for researchers to apply to. And these were still peer-reviewed and technically reviewed, but the process put in place was super fast. I mean, I really have to say that the scientists were extremely responsive, and so it went very smooth. And then there was, we are also somehow involved in a more international consortium with the United States, also focused on the COVID.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you've reviewed, nearly 200 submissions for this accelerated program. Do you have any examples of projects that are leading this subject and this research?
Yeah. Everybody, the way I understood it also by reading this proposal, is everybody is well addressing this SARS-CoV-2, because this is the name of the virus, COVID. The D in the COVID is for disease. So the virus has been, by studying a specific kind of protein, nucleocapsid called protein. And this is the approach that everybody's using. But actually here, and I found this very interesting, because here we had a proposal that actually was looking at the problem by studying the membrane protein, the protein membrane. So they were addressing this E protein, is really called the E protein, which is a pentameric channel. And what they were trying to do is to try to study how the ions are transferred in these membranes, and by studying the functional of these the functional properties of these channels and the membranes, they would like to find out to define a mechanism to block this transfer, and therefore to block the virus to enter the proteins and destroy them and attack them. So this is a very interesting proposal. Actually, the proposal is completed because the idea of this fast track was to have a limited amount of time. So you should have come with a very specific problem, and you should be able to complete or to address this problem within 6 months. So now scientists are actually wrapping up the results and ready to publish. And then another very interesting proposal, because he was also addressing the drugs that are already available on the market, it was that they wanted to find an efficient treatment among these drugs already available. So they were only targeting market-approved drugs to try to understand if there was one of those drugs that would easily and that is easily accessible, that would easily be used to stop this spread of this virus, which I find it also very interesting because, you know, it's a limited amount of time, and again, they wanted to really come up with something useful as soon as possible.
So you mentioned that a part of this program is that the researchers are restricted to 6 months for them to be able to do this research. So given that that's not the traditional nature of research, how has their access to HPC, how has that enabled and accelerated the research that they're able to do in this field?
Because there are a lot of calls to do standard research. I mean, for standard research, I mean, to submit your ideas and ask for 1 year, 2 years, up to 3 years to run your research and come up with results. But here, we were really trying to tell scientists, guys, this is an emergency, and we need to understand. I mean, I don't know in your part of the world, but here, we really knew very, very little in March, April. And so it was just a rough idea of what this virus is, because the coronaviruses are not unknown species, so to speak. But the idea was people think about something, really one relevant scientific questions that you can address and that will help everybody to understand more about this virus, or come up with something that would help to put up a cure for this virus. And therefore, 6 months was thought to be a reasonable amount of time to really address one specific focused question. Now, if you're asking me whether we will continue, of course, but scientists, they want to really study more in depth and continue this kind of studies, they can submit in regular calls.
So cool. And so given that we're now kind of 6 months down the track from when these projects began, for the accelerated program, do you think that 6 months was enough time? Should they have more or less time, or?
I think that it was, this is why I say it was successful, because they were really coming with one specific question, and I saw they were able to start immediately, because you know, you don't need preparation for your code or whatnot. You come with a scientific problem that you know you can address with a code that is already there and running on this system, and so you start right away. Of course, research is never a precise science, in the sense that you start in a way, and maybe in the middle of it you start seeing unexpected results that would deviate you from your original idea. But I have seen scientists using these resources, and I assume, truth must be said, I have not yet got in contact with them to ask whether they already had results. But the fact that none of them also, at least the Swiss one, no, the one that applied on the Swiss system, they did not ask for an extension. So for me, this is also a sign that the resources that they were asking were sufficient to address their problem in time and in no hours, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense. So my final question to you is that you're working with a range of scientists. We're all trying to solve the same problem, and there are a few initiatives around the world that are very similar to yours. For example, at Pawsey, in Australia, we also have a similar accelerated program where the 2 supercomputing centres have come together to give researchers accelerated access to the supercomputers outside of the usual call for allocations every year. we're trying to solve a global problem. We're in a pandemic. And so I think that the sharing of knowledge is and collaboration is probably more important than it ever has been before, because we're now expanding out of science and we're tackling global problems that are affecting every single person in the world. What initiatives are you involved in to help accelerate and advance COVID-19 research in the name of sharing knowledge and collaboration?
So I didn't say this, but thank you, because this is a very important point, the sharing of the knowledge and the sharing of the data. So because this is in all these calls, these fast track calls or whatever they were called, there was one important point. All scientists had to agree up front that they would share the results as soon as they had them, so not after you have published and everything. So there is a common repository, and there is also a sharing infrastructure already in place in Europe, because it was put in place for different projects, but was also used for this one, which is called the Phoenix infrastructure. And I pronounce it Phoenix because it's an F-E, not a P-H. So it's not a mistake due to my nationality, it's because it's a Phoenix infrastructure, and where scientists were explicitly asked to put their data, to share their results as soon as they got them. Because I am already convinced that science is one of these few fields in the world that remains, that is really beyond borders. So borders have no meaning for science, because scientists are willing to collaborate, and there are collaborations everywhere. Of course, there is competition, but competition is a different thing than not willing to collaborate because I am Swiss and you are New Zealander. I mean, there's not that kind of competition. Sometimes, okay, there might be also a little bit of that, but overall, I think science is really without borders, and this has proved it, because they have immediately agreed to use this infrastructure to actually put the data and share the knowledge and the results.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this video.
Thank you for inviting me.